Testing the mic. What's going on, guys? What's going on, everybody? It's a little bit of a sad one today, but welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the tragic death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells. May his soul rest in peace at the bosom of the Almighty Lord. A case that has sparked an enormous amount of discussion online over the past few weeks. Now, one thing I want to make clear right from the start is that I'm not accusing anybody or pretending that we know exactly what is going on here, right? Like the investigation is still ongoing. There are a lot of rumors circulating online, and my goal tonight is simply to separate verified information from speculation and react to some of the public discussion surrounding this case. And so that's why I have it scripted today. I don't want to freestyle. I want to be very respectful of this topic because at the end of the day, somebody is dead as a result of this. So I thought like an interesting clip for today would be Stephen A. Smith. I wanted to know what he thinks about this because he's a prominent figure, especially in the African American demographics. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Edition, a special edition of Straight Shooter. As always, I appreciate the love and support that y'all have been giving me. Thanks so much for all the love and support. Just continue to support Straight Shooter. Just go to Stephen A. Smith, Straight Shooter, and obviously you'll be the latest member of the Straight Shooter family. A lot of stuff to get into, no doubt. I'm going to have another panel today. It's going to be my fourth panel, and it's involving the case of Nolan Wells, the 18-year-old college football player out of Ocean Springs, Mississippi, who died. Body was found July 6th, 2 days after going away with some friends on July 4th. A lot of people are talking about this story because, according to the reports, he was a black dude, and he was the only black dude with a few white dudes, and they all came back alive, and he didn't. Clearly, since that time, we've learned via reporting on the part of some people, via an autopsy report and other things, that there are some conflicting facts that need to be brought to light. And I think that it's time to have a discussion about this from the vantage point of two completely different sides.
Right. And so before we dive into more detail there, let's just start with what we know, right? So what do we know? Like Nolan Wells, he was an 18-year-old football player from Mississippi. Like I believe Stephen A. Smith already said that. And then after they had gone for the 4th of July trip, at some point during that trip, Nolan is believed to have been separated from the rest of the group. And he did not return with them. 2 days later, his body was recovered. And since then, law enforcement has continued investigating exactly what happened and has asked members of the public to come forward with any photos, videos, or information that might help. So why has this become such a big case? Why has it exploded across social media? Well, it's because there's still a lot of unanswered questions. Naturally, people want answers whenever someone so young loses their life. Now, I don't think that this has anything to do with because he was the only black person there or the only white person there. I think even if it was all blacks or all whites, chances are that this would still be getting, I would hope that it will still be getting this much coverage. Now, some people believe that there was foul play. Others believe this may be some tragic accident. I want to hear from you guys down in the chat. Like, I don't want to speculate, but any of you guys that maybe you know of something extra that I might be glossing over, feel free to let us know in the chat. But at this point, investigators have continued gathering evidence while the investigation remains active.
One is a liberal, one's a former police officer, one is a civil rights attorney and a legal mind. It's a lot to get into, make no mistake about it. It's going to be Officer Tatum on the right. It's going to be Charles F. Coleman Jr., civil rights attorney, on the left. And there's clearly a lot of things to get into, conflicting accounts. One friend claimed Wells chose to stay behind to talk to a girl. Wells' family strongly disputes this, stating they raised him to never separate from his group. There's a boat issue. Phone records and dispatch audio indicate the friend's boat suffered a mechanical failure around 4 p.m. as they left the island. When calling for a tow, the operator stated everyone on board was in good health. There's also the issue of Nolan Wells' body being found after being reported missing by his mother near midnight. A multi-agency search was launched. A National Park Service ranger found Wells' body floating face down on the northwestern tip of Horn Island on July 6th. Again, civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump is representing the family. And Officer Tatum, as in Brandon Tatum, traveled to Mississippi, interviewed one of the boys involved in the case, but according to him, he probably interviewed several folks in attendance that July 4th day. So there's a lot of stuff to get into, and without further ado, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I know very little about this case other than what I've read and what I've seen on television. I've heard the reports implying one thing. Nevertheless, we're hearing other things come to light. So rather than speculate any longer, let's get to the bottom of it to the best that we can at this particular moment in time, with one autopsy having been done, another autopsy being performed, and evidence emanating from that's been deemed incomplete, to say the least. There's a lot to get into. So without further ado, here we go. Get your ears perked up. Get your thought process circulating and percolating. It's time to get into it right now. My first guest is a civil rights attorney, a former federal prosecutor, and an MS Now legal analyst. He writes the What Matters Now newsletter on Beehive, and you can catch him on his podcast, The Brothers Briefing. He is joined by a former Arizona police officer turned conservative YouTube political commentator and host of the Officer Tatum podcast. Please welcome to the show Charles F. Coleman Jr. and, of course, Officer Brandon Tatum. Good afternoon, fellas. How y'all doing? How's everything?
Blessed.
I'm doing well, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Charles Coleman Jr., let's start off with you. What can you tell us? I mean, the Nolan Wells case has been in the news for nearly 3 weeks now. For those who may not be aware of the case or have not kept up with the facts, just to recap, he was an 18-year-old college football player from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. On July 4th, he and a group of friends traveled by private boat to Horn Island, an uninhabited barrier island off the Mississippi coast. Wells was the only black person on the boat. Wells was last seen on the island around 3 p.m. His friends returned to the mainland without him. And as a result, ultimately, a couple of days later, he was found dead. Charles Coleman Jr., at this particular juncture, what's on your mind in terms of this case? What's missing? What are your thoughts?
Soyez d'attaque avec le nouvel Outlander hybride rechargeable de Mitsubishi. Partez à l'aventure avec sa performance électrisante.
Well, Stephen A., we just saw the family release their independent autopsy results yesterday, which were conducted by Dr. Roger Mitchell, who is the president of the National Medical Association. And those results were inconclusive. They were able to establish that Nolan Wells did not die by accident, that he did not die of natural causes, but at the same time that they were not able to establish that this was a homicide. In fact, those results established that it was not a homicide. Now, one important caveat to note is that the chief medical officer from the state of Mississippi, the sheriff's office, removed the throat from Nolan Wells's autopsy when their autopsy was conducted first. We have not heard the results of the state's autopsy, but we know that when Roger Mitchell examined the body for the family, that the throat and other organs have been removed. So that your listeners understand, that's not abnormal. That is something that takes place normally during the case of an.
Let's say, right? Like, isn't that compromising, like the investigation, removing or tampering with the body? But I want to hear what this guy has to say. It looks like that is standard protocol, or it looks like that is not so unheard of.
Investigation and of an autopsy. So there's nothing that was wrong there. But at this point, Dr. Roger Mitchell, who did the independent autopsy from the family, has not been able to confirm any sense of foul play as of yet. That was undecided or undecisive. That does not mean that foul play may not have occurred. It just means that the autopsy that was conducted by the family did not show that conclusively. He saw some trauma to some potential trauma to Nolan Wells's head, That was not something that he was able to explain as being the result of foul play. And we have yet to hear the state's autopsy and what they found and what their findings were. You may recall, and listeners may recall, that initially the sheriff's office said that they had no reason to suspect that foul play was afoot. And what I would say that this autopsy confirms from the family is that while that cannot be certainly confirmed, it still can't be ruled out. So finally, there are 60 witnesses that have been interviewed in the
All
course of
right.
this
So
investigation.
I don't know about you guys, but I didn't really hear his justification for why the throat was removed. So just bear with me here. This is a live stream, so if you're watching the replay, you can just skip ahead. But I do want to educate myself on that, so I'm going to do a quick search. So let's see. Why was Nolan's throat and other organs removed? All right, so it says here, Nolan Wells' throat. So Nolan Wells' throat structures and other organs were retained or dissected during the initial state autopsy by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office for ongoing official evaluation, specialized testing, and laboratory investigation. I see. Autopsy, okay, so it says here autopsy and investigation details. So standard forensic practice. So apparently it's standard forensic practice. Retaining anterior neck structures like the larynx and trachea and dissecting organs during a primary post-mortem examination is a standard procedure used to check for signs of trauma, asphyxiation, or choking. Independent autopsy limitations. So when the family's independent pathologist, Dr. Roger Mitchell, received the body for a second examination, those specific retained neck tissues and intact organs were not present, which left the cause and manner of death officially listed as undetermined. So I guess now they have to wait to see the results of like the findings with the throat and neck structures. So pending official conclusions. So it says here, the official state autopsy report, so microscopic findings and toxicology results from the medical examiner's office remain pending. All right. So let's cut back to the clip here. It looks like it's standard operation.
Sheriff's office. There's likely going to be a presentation to the grand jury, and we don't know what the toxicology report will show from Nolan Wells because much of that is in the hands of the state. But as of right now, this is where things stand. And as a former prosecutor, I want to know what the state's autopsy is going to say and what are the witness accounts that they are going to put forward in the grand jury.
Officer Tatum, you personally interviewed, you traveled to Mississippi, from my understanding, to personally interview one of the young men who left the island without Nolan. Why should the public trust whatever account is coming from them right now, in your estimation, based on what you've learned? First things first, I shouldn't say that. First things first, what did you deduce from the conversation you had from one of the friends that was with Nolan Wells? What did you take away from that you'd like the public to know?
Well, Stephen A., I want to make sure this is clear. I actually spoke to all the boys that were being accused. I spoke to family members. I spoke to also their attorneys. It's just that the one young man had the, I wouldn't say courage, because others had reasons why they didn't want to come on the camera, but he was able to come on the camera, and I interviewed him. And I also interviewed another young man who was black, who was there, who had his own personal accounts of what happened. I'm not asking people to believe or not believe. I just wanted to give people the information. So nobody had heard from the young boys. Nobody had heard their accounts. And a lot of misinformation was put out there, some intentionally, some maybe not intentionally, but it was very detrimental and not conducive for the investigation into Nolan Wells' death. It was punitive.
Guys, before I continue here, I just took the liberty to find actually the clip between this Officer Tatum and one of the people that were with Nolan. Apparently his name is Warren. So I'm going to pull this on the screen right away. That's it right here.
Very pointed questions.
I mean, just straight out. The first thing I want to ask you is, did you kill Nolan? All right, Warren, we had a chance to get to know each other over the last, 2 days. Went out to Horn Island. So I've had an opportunity to talk to you about a few things. And the things that you've told me have literally blown my mind. But the world haven't had a chance yet to hear your story, to hear Nolan's story through you, through his friend. And it's not just you, it's a bunch of y'all. But, you know, some of the other guys were afraid because of the threats and the violence that's been threatened against their lives and all of the above. But you decided that you wanted to take this bold step and give a statement and, you know, get your side out here. And I want to start at the very beginning of all of this and ask you, what was your relationship like with Nolan? Who was he to you?
Nolan, I could describe Nolan in a million ways. I mean, Nolan was not just a best friend of me, but he was a brother. I grew up through elementary, middle school, high school, and even our freshman year of college. You know, we talked on the phone all the time. We were really close friends. And I mean, Nolan was like a brother to me. And Nolan lit up every room he walked in. He always had a smile on his face. He always had something good to say. I've never seen Nolan get in an argument with somebody and say bad things about someone. You know, there's a lot of people that talk crap nowadays, and Nolan was never that person. Sweetest soul ever. And I mean, I had a great relationship with Nolan. I've never got in an argument with Nolan. We were super close, and I've never said or will ever have anything bad to say about Nolan Wells.
Yeah, and you guys, you said you kind of grew up together. Mm-hmm. Did you know his mom, or how was that? Because I saw in the media where it appears that she may have said, at least I saw in part, that she said as if she didn't know any of you guys.
Right. Well, Nolan, a lot of the times was at like my house and at my buddy's house. We never went to Nolan's house and hung out. I mean, and my friend group's very, very tight knit. I mean, we hang out every day when we're back home from school. In high school, we hung out most weekdays and every day on the weekend. And I mean, we were never at Nolan's house, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But
Ask you some very pointed questions. I mean, just straight out. The first thing I want to ask you is, did you kill Nolan? All right, Warren. We had a chance to know each other.
That was just like, looks like that's not the full video. We might have to go to Officer Tatum's YouTube channel to see the full clip. So feel free to go do that. But what I think was actually very interesting there is some of the comments, right? So let's have a look at some of the comments.
For the last, 2 days.
So this one here is especially very interesting. And I want to know what you guys think about it. So someone says, this is a classic chess move by their attorneys. So apparently all those guys that were with him, they've all lawyered up. And so someone is saying, this is a classic chess move by the attorneys. The interviewer is a black man. That makes it seem like, look, we are not racist, in quotes. A lawyer would never allow their clients to speak directly to the media, especially before key facts of an investigation comes out. They only do this to be strategic and to put the narrative they want. Nice try, but I know this game well. This seems even more like a cover-up than ever. Wow. Strong claims indeed. What do you guys think about that? And actually the creator of the video, or like the person who posted the video, Angela, says the worst part, of course, aside from this young man losing his life, is that it's hard to trust any information at this point. It all feels performative to me, but I'm listening to all the information and trying to keep an open mind until the evidence is shown. Which is just, I agree with her here. Like, nobody knows for sure, so it's better to just keep an open mind. Don't jump to any conclusions. Nobody knows anything yet, and everybody is innocent until there's actually like a guilty conviction, right? But that is not the case right now. Everything is still allegedly. Nobody knows. Somebody is saying he's nervous as hell. Well, wouldn't you be nervous as well if your best friend is found dead, face down and like in the water? Like, you'll be shaken, right? So it's like, I think that is expected. If anything, I would even argue that if he wasn't nervous, then I would say that perhaps he might know something, right? So his accent, his nervousness is definitely founded in this scenario.
What was your relationship like with Nolan?
All right. So, anyways, we're gonna cut back to the video here, like Stephen A. Smith's video. But I just wanted to see what that interview was like with one of the friends.
Came out and started with race, it had to be something nefarious because these boys are white for any other reason. So I wanted to go out and hear the full story. And what I deduced from the interview and talking to everybody is that these young boys had nothing to do with what ended up happening to Nolan Wells. And also they were best friends. I mean, these kids had so many pictures, so many text messages of them being closer to Nolan than any other friend group. And also one thing that shocked me was that this was an island, not secluded, not an island with 5 or 6 people on it. It was an island where there was thousands of people there, hundreds of boats. And also a lot of people could verify the statements that was made from some of these young men. So I really wish that we could have started at a point to say, what happened to Nolan Wells? Let's work together as a community. Let's talk to these young men, talk to other people, and let's find out what happened to Nolan instead of jumping the race.
This is the perfect pair for your iPhone, and it replaces 3 different chargers. So when I travel, I don't pack extra cables, I don't have to pack extra bricks. This covers my phone, my watch, and anything USB Type-C.
Officer Tatum, how do you know that it was misinformation that was put out there? How did you come to the conclusion that something was misinformation? Explain that.
Well,
is it just
I knew
according to their account or something else?
No, initially I knew it was hogwash because when Al Sharpton and them got on TV, they automatically made an inference to say, well, it was something that had to happen because these kids were white. It was one white kids with one black boy. I mean, that there's no evidence to project that unless you believe every white person is nefarious in their dealings with black people. And so I thought that was suspicious on his face. And then they said that Nolan was the only black kid. He was not the only black kid. Many of his black friends were also at the island with him. So, some of those things that started to come out, I knew that they were not being truthful about what happened.
Charles, your thoughts, your response to what Officer Tatum just said.
I don't necessarily know that the
So just before we continue there, guys, it looks like Officer Tatum, after speaking to one of the friends, Warren Hudson, it looks like he's of the opinion that the boys couldn't have done it and that they were really good friends, best friends, in fact. And I mean, these are young boys. I just don't see the motives here, to be honest. And I've not heard anything about motives, anybody talking about why they would want to do something like that. So I don't know, I'm going to be listening and trying to see what is developed here, any new developments, but I don't see the motives, to be honest. Why would anybody want to do that? These are young boys with their lives ahead of them. I just don't see it, to be honest. I just don't, but it's just my own personal 2 cents. I could be wrong, obviously. So just take it with a grain of salt. Let's keep going.
initial statements about Nolan being with some of his white friends is entirely afactual. I also don't know that it is a nefarious statement in as much as these are facts. He was with a number of different white boys or a number of different boys who are white. I think that the problem with what Officer Tatum has just pointed out is that there is an underpinning of race when you're having a conversation about the types of things that happen and have happened.
That's very interesting. I really like the way Stephen A. Smith has gone about this, because he's actually not just gotten an echo chamber. He has people that actually are of opposing opinions. But something I did want to find out was actually, something that they mentioned earlier, right? I forget now my train of thoughts here. Shoot. Okay, well, when I remember, I'll come back to it.
Two black boys and black people.
Yes, that's right. I remember. So was he the only black person? So was Nolan the only black person on that island among the friend group. So let's find out. Oh, wow. So look at that. So it looks like Officer Tatum is saying that he wasn't the only black person, but a quick Google search with our friend AI over here, Gemini, says, yes, Nolan Wells was the only black person. Yes, Nolan Wells was the only black person in the specific group of friends who traveled with him to Horn Island on July 4, 2026. So, okay. They said here, social context, so wider circles. While he was the only black person present on that specific boat outing, some acquaintances and separate friends have stated that he had diverse and mixed friend groups in general school or social settings. Public discussion. His status as the only black person in that specific traveling group has heavily fueled national attention, online speculation, and public discussions led by the family's legal representation regarding the circumstances of his death. Okay, so he was the only black person on that boat. So I don't really know what Officer Tatum is talking about here, guys. But we'll keep going here. I think this is a really good conversation.
In Mississippi, such that it cannot be summarily dismissed. I did not necessarily jump to any conclusion, but the history of what race relations have been in Mississippi and how we have not necessarily been safe has caused me to take a special look at this case. It doesn't mean that I'm accusing anyone of anything. It doesn't mean that I do not believe in finding the process. But at the same time, I am not going to ignore the facts, which you just pointed out. These are facts. He may have been with other black people, but we have seen the pictures, we have seen the photos. There were a number of people who were gathered out there for the July 4th holiday, but Nolan Wells was with 3 boys who happened to be white. Those are facts.
He was with, but the thing is that it's facts without context. He was with more than just 3 white boys. That's the problem. There was over 20, 30 kids that got on 3 boats, and they all went to the island together. They didn't just travel with Nolan and just these 3 boys. Many of the boys that they're accusing, including Warren, wasn't even on the boat with Nolan when Nolan went out to the island. So some of those things were mischaracterizations of what actually happened. And the thing is that I don't think it's fair to say, because history has shown in part that white people or black people have had injustices, that all of a sudden you project that into a new situation. Black people have done nefarious things to other black people. Does that mean that you automatically jump to saying, oh, black people must be wrong in this situation? You know, because he had his black friends there too. And why nobody's questioning them? Why nobody's saying, why didn't the black friends rescue him? What did the black kids know about Nolan? And many of them said that they saw him last when the white boys had left at 4:30. So I just think that the race should never be interjected. Nolan's friends told me, and they proved to me that.
I have to agree with Officer Tatum here, to be honest. Like, I think this shouldn't just become like a debate about was he with white people or black people. It doesn't really matter, right? The fact is that there still needs to be an investigation, regardless of who he was with. Even if he was with all black people, all white people, mixed people, Asian people, it doesn't really matter. The investigation still needs to run its course. So I'm with Officer Tatum here, 100%.
They were really close to him, and they were some of his best friends. They said Nolan would have been incredibly upset at the way people are framing his death and going after his friends with no evidence.
Well, here's the thing. Hold on, Charles. I would say this to you, Officer Tatum. I get where you're coming from. And by the way, I appreciate the context and I appreciate the reporting on your part, because numerous reports that I had read was talking about how he was the only black kid there. He was a black kid with a few white boys. And you articulating that fact is very, very important. I think that's important and fair to point out. But what do you say to folks that will ask this kind of a question? He's on a boat. He's on an island. And according to numerous reports, he talked about staying behind and traveling back with a different set of company. Yet his car keys and his phone was left on a boat that he had traveled to those guys with. So what teenager do you know is saying he's staying someplace, but he's going to leave his car keys and his phone on the boat with the guys that he arrived at the island with. That does seem a bit suspicious, particularly when the guy's mother, Nolan Wells' mother, had to use some app to locate the phone, and it was something that wasn't given back. These are reports. I'm not pretending to know, Officer Tatum. These are what the report said. What do you say to that?
And this is where I feel like Benjamin Crump and them should be sued for them putting out this information without facts. Let me point the facts out. Without context, it sounds bizarre. But when you put it in the context that a lot of people left their phones on the boat that left. Many kids came to get their phone after they left the lake. Nolan was with a girl. It's not shocking that Nolan would have said, hey, man, you guys had to leave, because they had to leave in an emergency situation. It wasn't like they had time to prep and everything. The boat was sinking, so they had to go. And they told Nolan, get on the boat, get on the effing boat, man, let's go. And he like, nah, I'm finna hang out with this girl. I saw evidence of that, and others who had sent messages that I read that.
What I want to know right now is, like, what about the girl? Like, is anybody talking to the girl? Because if his friends got on the boat and left, and then he stayed back with the girl, then where is the girl in all this? And that leads me to want to investigate even more. So let's find out, actually, about the girl. So, who was the girl that Nolan was with? So it says here, the young woman Nolan Wells spent time with on Horn Island before his disappearance has been identified as 19-year-old. I don't really want to mention her name just for like her own anonymity. Oh my God. Anonymity. I think I got it right. I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, accounts of the interaction. So the friend group's accounts. So Nolan's friend, Warren Hudson, and other companions claim that their boat was taken on water. So that's the thing with the bilge pump. And they had to rush off the island. They allege that Nolan voluntarily chose to stay behind, specifically to talk to the girl that he was with, whom he had met that day. Okay. So her family's account. So this is the girl's family's account. This is their own side of the story. So her older sister and her family heavily dispute the friend's narrative. They stated to the Daily Mail that their daughter was on the island with a different group of people and merely had a normal conversation with Nolan. According to her family, their daughter assumed Nolan was getting ready to board the boat he arrived on and that his friends would never leave him behind. Wow. And now this is Nolan's mother's statement. She's saying that Nolan's mother, Christian Wansley, noted that the girl that Nolan was with initially reached out to her and described the encounter with Nolan as brief, casual, hey and bye situation. So that is definitely curiouser and curiouser, because that does not align with what Warren was telling to Officer Tatum there, that they had to leave and he stayed behind with the girl. Seems like the girl is denying that. So for sure, there's a lot of unknowns here. We'll keep the clip rolling here.
Said that they asked Nolan to go and he didn't want to go. Now, a lot of people left their phones on the boats because they're sitting in chest deep water and it's a bunch of people out there. The reception is not very good. So most people did not have their phone with them. Now, the phone and the keys situation, people need to understand the context. Nolan never brought his keys with him because they were on a boat driving 7 miles out to an island. His keys had always been at the residence where his car was. So when the guys go back, they text Nolan's mother. This is where it ticks me off. They showed me a phone call where immediately the first phone call that was made concerning Nolan was Warren called Nolan's mom, and she hung up the phone on him the first time because she didn't know who he was. The second call, he told her, hey, Nolan haven't come back. Do you know? Have you heard from him? And then they called the Coast Guard. So his mother was very much aware that they had Nolan's phone. His mother did not have to track the phone through Life 360. His mother didn't come get the phone.
Guys, I have to say, like, I'm not quite following Officer Tatum here. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Correct me if I'm wrong. But why, again, were you guys able to understand why his friends had to take his phone? Like, if it were me, I would want to have my phone, especially if I'm on an island. Unless is he saying that there's no service on the island or something? Like, I don't quite understand why wouldn't he want his phone in this day and age. I don't get that part.
Another parent of a black kid who was out there with Nolan came to get her son's phone and Nolan's phone. So why didn't Al Sharpton or any of them ask these boys what happened, have them show evidence, and then present it to the public? And it's because I think they wanted the race bait instead of trying to find out what happened to Nolan.
Do you know? Hold on, Charles. Do you know whether or not Al Sharpton and those guys had asked to talk to the kids, and the kids refused to talk to them? Do you know
No,
whether
they
there's
told
any
me
truth to that?
they told me that they haven't heard anything from Al Sharpton or anybody that tried to contact them. This is what they told me. Now, they showed me messages where parents had communicated and reached out to Benjamin Crump, his team, and said, we would love to communicate with you guys. Any questions you have, we want to talk to you guys so you can get the context. Also, they messaged Nolan's mother multiple times about communicating and saying, hey, if you need anything, if you want to talk, we can give you the context of what happened. And nobody reached out to these boys. And I saw evidence of this, which is what frustrated me about this in the first place.
Hey, on arrête-tu bientôt?
Ben non, pas besoin. Mon Sportage a un moteur hybride qui va jusqu'à 775 km sans faire de plein.
Bienvenue dans le futur avec le nouveau Kia Sportage éco-énergétique.
Kia, du mouvement vient l'inspiration.
Charles, floor is yours.
So here's the thing, Officer Tatum, we're not going to litigate the facts on here from one side of someone who's had an opportunity to talk to a sample size of people who were involved in this investigation. You and I know just as well that the real issue here is that the people who conducted the investigation, i.e. the Mississippi Sheriff's Department, who've talked to over 60 witnesses in this case, have not yet presented that case or their findings to a grand jury, and they've been extremely tight-lipped with respect to what they have found and what it is that they know. Where I'm going with this is, regardless of who you may have spoke to, who Benjamin Crump and Al Sharpton may have spoken to, what information they have had, we are all trying to piece this together. And so it is equally as unfair to present a certain set of facts as if this is the final context of things, when in reality, we don't know. What I will say about the overall situation is that for me, as a civil rights attorney, I am looking at this and I am saying that there needs to be a greater sense of transparency from the Sheriff's Department, because they are the ones who have spoken to most of the parties who have been involved in this case. They've conducted over 60 witness interviews. They've done the toxicology report. They have the autopsy. So these are the people who are truly equipped from an information place to give the public the most accurate picture. So I am not calling what you're putting out misinformation, but what I am saying is that that is just an equally biased and slanted point of view in the opposite way, because it lacks the full context. So because of that, let me finish. It's disingenuous intellectually, number one, to dismiss the notion of race, because that is choosing to ignore the history in America that we have faced. Number two, it's equally disingenuous to play a whataboutism to try and substitute the notion of black on black crime, which is a complete misnomer as to why we should not focus, or at least note, I won't even say focus, at least note the color issues that are at play with respect to what could or might have happened to Nolan Wells. Again, not necessarily being accusatory. And it's just as disingenuous for you to go further and say, well, we must assume, or it seems like Crump and Sharpton and everyone else was projecting the notion of race. That may have been your interpretation, which I cannot necessarily argue with, but it is just as problematic for you to suggest the polar opposite of that when none of us have conducted this full investigation. You have a limited sample size. I have a limited sample.
For sure. I 100% also agree with this guy. These are really intelligent men, I guess. That's why Stefan has brought them on his show, right? because he is correct. He's absolutely correct. Charles F. Coleman Jr. is absolutely correct when he says that the people with the most information are like the authorities, right? And not Officer Tatum and not him. So for Officer Tatum to act like he is the authority on the facts is disingenuous. And I would agree. I think the facts should be coming from like the official channels, right? Anything else outside of that should be just what you're thinking or your opinion or based on what they've told you or based on what you've read from the people that are actually sharing the facts. But 100% of Sataram is not the authority here. And that's why he's not the one in charge of the investigation.
Sides, the public has been wrought with misinformation. So for me, the real issue here is the lack of transparency from the sheriff's office to give the public a complete picture.
Well, let me tell you where I disagree with you fully. As a former police officer, and I was a PIO, I dealt with all of these things. The police department is not an injustice. When you say there's a lack of communication or transparency, the police department cannot put this information out there when you still have suspects at large. If they go and release some of this information and show their hands of what they know and don't know, then potential suspects will begin to destroy evidence. They'll start hiding. They'll start cleaning stuff. You don't want to give that information out to the public until you know for a fact that you've been able to communicate with every suspect that's out there. If you start putting out the autopsy prematurely, and it shows blunt force to the head, strangulation to the neck, then the people who have done this are going to make sure they hide the murder weapon. They're going to make sure they get their stories together and say, no, I didn't hit him in the back of the head. You don't want to project those things too prematurely. So there's no issue with transparency. And I'll say this: the reason that I'm talking about Al Sharpton and them is because the first thing that they said was that he was there with white boys, therefore there had to been something. And then it goes back historically. Some of them compared this to the young man.
I've heard very different messages from them when they have said, we cannot assume that this is racist, but we cannot assume that it wasn't. So I'm going to correct you there.
Let me jump in here.
Who's that, Charles? Hold on. Charles, who said that? Who said that?
Literally during his eulogy, Al Sharpton said, we cannot assume that this was racist, and he said, we can also not assume that it wasn't.
Take your time. Take your time. Hold on, guys, take your time. Ain't nothing getting edited out. Don't worry about it. Trust me. All of it is, I'm not editing a damn thing. Go ahead, Officer Tatum, the floor is yours.
Well, let me interject. When you are looking for justice for your child in a criminal case, meaning that somebody committed a crime against your child, why do you go out and get a civil rights attorney? These Benjamin Crump and them are known for going after these cases specifically in injustices against black people.
Let me answer that.
Let me try. Okay, I'm going to interject. Yeah. So actually, why don't we go ahead and actually look up who is this Crump fellow they're talking about? Like, let's go back. Did you guys hear the name? I think it was somewhere in the 22:15 mark. Let's see.
Specifically in injustices against black people.
Let me answer that.
Let me try first.
Okay, go ahead.
No, that's fair. No, that's fair, Charles. Go ahead.
I'm a former prosecutor. I'm a civil rights attorney. Please understand how these things work. At the end of the day, when you're talking about quote unquote justice, the first reason why you get someone like Benjamin Crump is because he's
Benjamin Crump. Let's go find him. Benjamin Crump. Let's see what he said that got everybody so riled up. Benjamin Crump on Nolan. Let's see. All right, let's see some of these here. Attorney Benjamin Crump.
Christine and Elmo got the worst news of their life on what was supposed to be a joyous occasion where everybody was celebrating the 4th of July weekend. I'm Attorney Ben Crump, along with Attorney Lisa Park and Jared Presson and Camila Moore. We have the honor and the privilege of helping to lead an independent investigation on behalf of the family of Nolan Wells. Why do you say we need to be retained to lead an independent investigation? It is because the family has distrust of the Mississippi law enforcement officials giving them a fair investigation where their black son ended up dead after going out on a boat with 3 young white men. The history of Mississippi is something that they don't just read about in books, but it's a lived experience for many black Americans, that oftentimes when our children are killed in highly questionable situations, that there is this notion that, oh, it was nothing wrong, no foul play, let's just sweep it under the rug. Well, we refuse to sweep it under the rug.
So that's the thing, though, right? Is anybody saying to just sweep it under the rug, or are they just saying don't make it race-based? Just don't sweep it under the rug, but just still investigate it and don't make it about race. Now, I don't want to trivialize the racism issues, or I don't know how it is in Mississippi. I don't know what the history is like, right? I'm African, so we weren't among the people that were shipped off, right? So I don't know. Well, like, actually, maybe you'd have even, yeah, I don't know, but we stayed in Africa. We stayed back in Africa. So I don't know what it was like in Mississippi, but let's check, actually, because I don't want to be insensitive, right? So what is the history of racism in Mississippi? So the history of racism in Mississippi is defined by chattel slavery, the violent overthrow of Reconstruction, and decades of rigid Jim Crow segregation enforced by racial terror. The state had the highest rate of lynchings in the U.S. Wow, I did not know that. And served as a violent focal point during the civil rights movement. So slavery and Reconstruction, the plantation economy. Before the Civil War, Mississippi relied heavily on enslaved black labor to build a massive cotton economy where people of African descent were treated as property. Brief political gains. During the Reconstruction era, black Mississippians briefly gained voting rights and elected permanent leaders, including the nation's first black U.S. Senator Hiram Revels and Blanche K. Bruce. So in the year 1990, the 1990 Constitution, white lawmakers enacted a new state constitution in 1890, explicitly designed to strip black citizens of the right to vote through poll taxes. Wow, this is as recent as, huh? Wait, okay, no, why did they say 1990 here and then 1890 there? So I'm confused. And then, but anyways, here it says here Jim Crow and racial terror. Systemic segregation, state laws forced separate schools, public transportation. So in any case, it looks like they have the, like, I can understand actually. So you see here lynchings and violence between the end of the Reconstruction and the 1960s. White vigilantes and groups like the You Know Who recorded at least 539 lynchings in Mississippi, using public murder and intimidation to suppress any challenge to white rule. And this is why I said I don't want to be insensitive and just rule out anything like that. Perhaps it could be absolutely racially charged. Nobody knows. I'm not going to rule that out, especially seeing what I've just seen now. I'm not going to say that, okay, this is unfounded or that they are reaching, to be quite honest with you. But we're going to keep it rolling here, guys.
Person who has experience with wrongful death lawsuits.
Black people.
So it's not about black people. No,
it is. Benjamin don't represent white people.
Please talk about that is completely false. That is completely false.
When was the last case he represented where he supported white people?
I'm not here to do your research for you.
No, you're the one said it. I'm telling you that it didn't happen.
But Benjamin Crump has a long-standing career of supporting people of all races and ethnicities when it comes to the violation of their civil rights.
Give me one.
As well as personal injury. So please let me answer your question.
Go ahead.
The reason why you get a civil rights attorney is because, number one, Benjamin Crump has extensive experience when it comes to wrongful death suits. Number two, in this situation, it is possible that there may be an element that Nolan Wells' civil rights were violated and that something...
Yeah, not just that, but I'm a little bit surprised by Officer Tatum asking what he's asking. So with his own logic, then why are his friends all lawyered up? If he's saying why are they, or is he telling them what kind of lawyers to get? You know, like they get what they feel is going to get them the best outcome. Just the same way that Nolan's friends have also gotten their lawyers in the attempt to get themselves the best outcome. So I say fair game.
May have happened to him because of his color, which is why you get a civil rights attorney, is why you get a civil rights attorney. And so that is the answer to your question.
It's about color.
You see, like, I don't really get why Officer Tatum is acting like it's unheard of, right? It's not unheard of that like people commit crimes based on color, and it's not just white on black. You can also have black on white, right? Like racism exists on both sides. So why Officer Tatum is acting like as if it's unheard of is beyond me. I don't understand that part. Now, do I agree with him that like these young boys, like that I don't see the motives. What is in it for them? I'm 100%. But for him to be completely dismissive about the fact that like people that may be questioning if he was racially charged, I think that's a little bit insensitive of him, especially given the history, as I just learned, of Mississippi. Not to mention, and I don't know which one was worse. Was the slave trade era, was it worse than I believe the thing with the Israelis? Because right now Israel is still highly protected, right? And nobody says, hey, well, why are you guys playing that card all the time, right? Like acting like as if everybody's out to get you. But it looks like Officer Tatum just expects black people to just move on. And perhaps we should just move on. I agree. But then why doesn't anybody tell that to Israel? That's what I want to know. I don't want to make this about Israel, guys. So pardon me.
Prosecutor, you let the police and the sheriff's office deal with the notion of criminality, because that is one thing that Benjamin Crump can't do anything about.
Well, let's say this, brother. Can I jump in here?
That's why you go get someone like Benjamin Crump.
Why wouldn't the kids get civil rights? Like for instance, people were saying, why did these kids lawyer up? Well, first of all, many of them didn't even have a lawyer. They went and talked to investigators and did a lie detector test equivalent with no lawyers. Okay, so but anyway, would you think it would be weird if these kids went out and got a civil rights attorney?
No. Like he didn't really explain why did they get a lawyer. And then he said they didn't have a lawyer at first. But they have a lawyer now. So why did they get a lawyer? And now he's trying to change it to say, well, why what if they got a civil rights lawyer? It doesn't matter. The question is, why did they get a lawyer?
You'll never be promoted into a room you sound like you don't belong in.
Why would they have a civil rights attorney? They're not being accused of anything.
They are being accused. They are being accused.
Who's accused them?
Who has accused them? Al Sharpton. Benjamin Crump.
Show me where Al Sharpton has accused them of something.
All right, they said this is what they said.
Suspicious.
This is what they said. No. They said they put these boys' pictures out on the internet and said he went out, and they framed it as he went out just with them. And something happened, and we know something happened, and why they hiding phones and doing all this? He's accusing them before any evidence is presented.
That's not an accusation. That is an accusation. But Charles, it is a statement of suspicion. That is not an accusation.
Charles, Charles, let me chime in here. A statement of suspicion, some people would say, is an accusation. I understand from the legal.
I agree there. I agree. Like if you're trying to kind of say like, well, yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah.
Literal sense what you're saying. But talking amongst ourselves right now, when you say a statement of suspicion is not an accusation, that's not how people interpret a statement of suspicion. When you make a statement of suspicion, you're making an accusation. I mean, can we at least concede that, Charles?
What I will say in response to that, Stephen A, is to whatever extent there may have been statements of suspicion that were interpreted in that manner given early on. I think the record has been clear leading up to and during Nolan Wells' funeral that A, we don't know what happened, B, we won't rule anything out, and C, with respect to ruling anything out or not ruling anything out, we are not saying that this absolutely happened, but we are not saying that we are.
You know what though? Like I guess like they should ask Charles the question in a different way, right? In my opinion. So they should be asking him like if he were the one, right? Like, and then someone is making a statement that is very much hinting that he might have committed a crime that was charged by racism. Would he then take the initiatives and like be proactive to protect himself, cover his behind based on the statements? Or would he just say, well, nobody accused me of anything? No, they didn't accuse you. They didn't need to. They gave a whole ass statement about that. So yeah, I think he needs to consider this, but he probably won't, because I guess now they're just in like the debate mode, which is unfortunate, right? Because while these people are debating, while we're all talking about this, Nolan is no longer here with us, and that's the sad part, right? And so my thoughts and my prayers are with his family, because I can't imagine what they're going through. Like, no parent should have to bury their child. So my heart is with him and his family.
Resting until we get answers.
Can I show you where this becomes biased?
Officer Taylor, let me come at you with this. What's wrong? There's a kid now. Okay, granted, you did your homework. You went out there and you actually talked to several of his friends. Props to you for that. But the bottom line is, this kid, Nolan Wells, is dead. And he was the only one that was dead. What's wrong with, again, in the state of Mississippi, not just with white boys, there were some dudes there as well, but he had other people there. He was the one that did not come home alive. Again, without an official accusation. What's wrong with having your suspicions raised and saying, listen, we need some damn answers. Something ain't right. He was a healthy young 18-year-old and he didn't come home alive. How'd that happen? What's wrong with that?
Now, if they had context and all the information and then they led with that, I would have no problem with it. But let me tell you this right now, Stephen A. Smith and Charles, I'm telling you right now, if a white boy was on an island with his black friends, all black, and some white folks put on a camera that something must be suspicious because the one white boy is with all these black dudes, and something may have happened. We know that people covering it up and everything because these kids black. Man, we'd be pissed off on that. Ain't no way in the world I'd accept somebody saying, you gonna blame these black boys for doing something to this kid just because they black? That's insane. And that's what happened in this situation.
If a white boy had been on that boat with 3 black boys, we would have seen a very different.
Where's your evidence? Give me a case.
History.
No history.
Where is Officer Tatum's evidence then? Where is his evidence that if the situation was reversed, that the reaction will be any different? Where is his evidence?
You say history can tell us everything.
We would have seen please let me finish my statement. We would have seen a very different.
Give me an example
of the Central Park, the exonerated 5.
Well, first of all, 5 of them didn't go to prison. It was Central Park 5. Only 4 of them. Only 4 of them went to prison.
It was actually 6 of them, and 5 of them went to prison. And
said it was only 4 of them. Heck, if it was just 1 that went to prison, that was 1 too many. Because I watched that show, I watched that movie on Netflix, and let me tell you, that was quite sad. Quite sad what happened to those boys. Right? So that is a good thinking from Charles F. Coleman there to come up with that on a whim like that. Smart move right there from him. Good thinking.
And let me tell you how they went to prison.
I'm not going to quibble with you.
You won't give context.
One at a time, guys. One at a time. One at a time.
You asked for an example. I'm not going to quibble with you and say, well, they're called the exonerated 5 and only 4 went to. I'm not going to do that. The exonerated 5. You wanted an example. I gave you an example.
That's not an equivalent example.
And there are other examples throughout history.
Kind of is, right? Okay, well, I understand that the girl that was running, she didn't go out explicitly with those 5 boys, right? So they were not friends either. But the bottom line remains that they just accused those 5 black boys, right? And then they blamed them and imprisoned them for the murder of that girl that was running. If I'm not forgetting my story right, that's I think what happened with the Central Park 5, right? So it is kind of similar. It's not exactly apples to apples because they were not friends with the girl. They didn't go to an island together with the girl. But we saw like how swift it was, like their punishment, right? When it had to do with a white girl, right? And it probably didn't help that it was a white girl. If it was a white guy, it might have been maybe different. But then, like, I believe that the white woman is a very, very protected class, right? So you do not want to mess with your Caucasian lady, guys. Just as a heads up, be very careful.
We're starting with Emmett Till and
Emmett
going throughout
Till?
Are
you comparing this to Emmett Till?
You asked me.
No. Are you saying that this is equivalent to Emmett Till?
You asked me for an example.
So you're saying that it's equivalent?
Where if reversed?
Okay. I'm gonna let you finish.
I'm telling you. I'm giving you examples. What I'm telling you is that if the situation were reversed, we would have seen a very different investigation from law enforcement from the actual outset.
Let me interject.
We as a people, when it comes as a former prosecutor, because here's the thing, you're a former police officer, and that's fine. But when it comes to after arrests are made and how prosecutions are going, that's my space. That's my lane. So I'm going to speak from my lane.
Honestly, it's true. I have to agree with Charles here. It's true. The level of like the thoroughness and like just how everybody is on it was quite different. Well, but maybe it's still early days, so I'm not gonna say that they are doing less for Nolan than they did for the girl in the Central Park 5 case. Right? I'm not gonna say that the police are treating it any differently, because it's a different case. So every case is different and requires different methods. So I'm not going to say anything here. I'm not going to make any statements and say that, okay, well, they gave it more seriousness than they're giving to Nolan, right? We don't know why they're doing what they're doing. We're not the experts. We have to trust our law enforcement officers, right? That's what we have to do. That's why they're there. And then the moment that we start to lose trust in them, then you know that you have a bigger issue, actually.
And what I can tell you is we do not typically enjoy the benefit of the doubt when it comes to probable cause.
That's not true.
I'm telling you as a former prosecutor, I'm not going to tell you what it's like to be
arrest people and I deal with.
True. I think if anybody has more authority here to say who's actually getting like a more of like a benefit of the doubt, it would be Charles, right? Because he's the one that is inside of the courtroom. He's like, whereas Officer Tatum is a police officer, he's kind of arresting people, but he's not really in the courtroom. So he wouldn't know, right? He wouldn't know how these cases go. So if I'm going to listen to anybody on this one, it's going to be Charles.
Prosecutors.
I'm not going
to have to do it. I have to interview with the prosecutors every time there's an arrest. And we have to go to trial.
Well, he's not saying that you don't know. Hold on. He's not saying that you don't know, Officer Tatum. What he's saying is from his perspective as a prosecutor, this is what he's bringing up. Now, I granted, I don't blame Officer Tatum. I don't blame Officer Tatum from bringing up, when acting incredulous when he says you'd say Emmett Till. That's 1955. Al Sharpton brought up Medgar Evers at the funeral. That's 1963. So if Officer Tatum's going to look at it and say, that's what you're bringing up, I get where he's coming from in terms of the distance between then and now. But I also get where you're coming from, Charles Coleman Jr., when you highlight, listen, from an historical perspective, we're talking about, we've seen things like this before, and those are just names that we know. There's a plethora of names that we may not have known that have transpired throughout history that have suffered some of these maladies, and we get that part too. Go ahead, Officer Tatum, floor is yours.
But what I'm saying is that you cannot project that. It's unfair to project that. You can have it in your subconscious that there has been things that have been done wrong, but you got to treat these things fairly. You cannot go out and project that somehow the sheriff is a racist and he's not going to do right by these boys. That's not right. Let the investigation ensue. And then if you see impropriety in the investigation, then you can project that. But listen, they interviewed you just said they interviewed 60 people. They interviewed all these boys the day of. Like, what did they do wrong? They did an autopsy.
Officer Tatum, Respectfully, what about those who would say the same or would ask the same question about you? Are you being fair? Because just like you have people out there that are elevating their level of suspicion and jumping to some sort of conclusion attached to guilt as it pertains to the death of Nolan Wells, you're coming across as somebody who's assuming these individuals that were in attendance with him were innocent because of your conversations with them, as opposed to not getting the full context the way Charles Coleman Jr. just highlighted.
No, yeah, I accept people saying that, but let me tell you that I saw proof. I'm not just taking somebody's account for it. And I'm not saying that nobody didn't kill Nolan. I'm telling you, the people that they put out on the internet and said these white boys were the only ones with him, and they're getting death threats. While I was out there, somebody sent the suspicious package to one of the boys' houses. They showing up at these boys' houses saying that they killed them. Go look on the internet and look at any these videos. They got the boy pictures up there saying they had something to do with his death. They're claiming they deleting text messages. All of this stuff is incredibly ridiculous. When I went out and I said, show me the proof then. Not just what you say, show me the proof. And these kids are showing proof, their lawyers are showing proof that they had nothing to do with this. They have a Life 360 just like Nolan did. Their Life 360 showed that they were not on the island, or at least, you know, the young man that I interviewed, he wasn't even on the island. I saw his Life 360. So, I mean, these kids, they shouldn't have done these boys like this. They should let the investigation go and then make their accusations.
So you're highlighting specifically, you're not even saying, like you just said, you're not even saying that.
Yeah, so I agree with Officer Tatum here. Like, they should not be accusing anybody. And this happens a lot of times, right? Like, even with, like, the whole Me Too thing, right? Like, once they just mention a guy and then say that, oh, he did it too, then that guy's life is pretty much over, even before there has even been a hearing, right? I don't know what is up with that, but that needs to stop, to be honest. Like, if it's innocent until proven guilty, then that is what it means. Then nobody should be getting accused or dragged until there's some proper evidence. So I completely agree with Officer Tatum on that one.
Nolan Wells, that some vile act, that he wasn't murdered. You're saying that these boys, those are the ones that are being unfairly scrutinized and villainized by this whole ordeal. That's what you're saying, Officer.
Exactly, and I don't know why they're like really dragging those boys. Like I was saying, what about the girl that he was supposedly with? Or maybe they are asking her a lot of questions, but it's not just, she's just not at the front of it all, right? But why isn't that girl that he was supposedly with also being on the front of all this as well? In my opinion, like, she should also be asked all these questions. So why is it just the boys? You just have to wonder, right?
Is that accurate?
Yes, Stephen A. There were black kids there who now getting threats online too for coming out and saying something. But nobody's saying, what did these black kids have anything to do with it? The young girl he was kicking it with, they don't have her name out there. Well, her name is Katie, but I'm not gonna say her full name. I don't want her to get doxxed. They not nobody talking about her. She said she was the last one. I mean, she at least mentioned that she was with him. The boy showed me text messages from her that she's saying that she was with him. Like, why ain't nobody coming at her?
I've seen, and see, this is where it gets dangerous, right? The importance in this moment is to focus on the integrity of the overall process. And when I say the overall process, I'm referring to the investigation, because I knew that the girl's name was Katie. I don't know her last name, and I knew it because there were people who I was seeing in the comment sections that I had on videos that I had done updating people about the case, who were asking the same questions that you have. People,
but Benjamin Crump isn't.
Please. So here's the thing, which is why when you're trying to, and at the end of the day, listen, you don't know what Benjamin Crump is doing as far as investigating a case. The same way that you talked about, you know, with an investigation, there are certain things that you don't reveal. You don't know what that team of lawyers are doing with respect to trying to ascertain the facts.
I reached out to them.
When it comes to, did they answer you or did they not answer you?
Well, they answered us on the last one and refused to respond to us. I mean, they refused to engage with us.
They don't owe you that.
Well, which is fine.
All right, guys. So yeah, the interview goes on like it's another 20 minutes to go. But for me, like, what I find really curious is actually about that phone, because I never really understood why his phone was taken. So I don't get it. So Why did Nolan not have his mobile phone? That is weird. That one is weird. So, yeah, was his name Christopher Nolan? Nolan Well. So no, oh my God. Why did Nolan Wells not have his cell phone? Yeah, so it says here the exact reason Nolan Wells did not have his cell phone when he vanished remains a central and highly contested mystery in the ongoing investigation, as it should be, right? As it absolutely should be. An 18-year-old college football player, Nolan Wells. Yeah, so the family's allegations and video evidence. So the phone arguments, family attorneys, including civil rights lawyer Ben Crump, points to a viral video recorded on the island. In the audio, Wells is allegedly heard demanding his phone back from the individuals he was with, suggesting it was being withheld from him. Suspected data deletion. When Wells' father tracked and finally retrieved the phone from the friends on the mainland, the family noticed that text messages and Snapchat data appeared to have been deleted. The phone is now undergoing a joint forensic inspection by the FBI, local law enforcement, and independent experts. So that right there is something I'm going to want to know, actually, about the phone. So I'm going to be watching that space for sure as it relates to the phone. Now it says here that so family attorney, including civil rights lawyer Ben Crump, points to a viral video recorded on the island. So can I find that here? So viral video recorded on the island in the audio here demanding his phone back from the individuals. So let me check this out. Can I find anything about that here? Let's see on TikTok. Can we see anything about that? So here, let's see. So I don't know if you guys heard that, but I definitely heard something along the lines of "give me my effing phone." And so some of the comments here, they seem to be agreeing. They say his parents said it was his voice. I know my children's voice anywhere. That's true. Someone says sounds like he said, "give me my MF phone before I F you up." Yeah. So, and then someone is saying the lady that filmed the videos claims the argument was coming from the boat she was on. Oh boy. Someone says someone has already concluded it and has actually convicted them. Says OMG dude. That's crazy. What else do we have here, y'all? Let's see. Honestly, like when I look at this, right? When I look at this, to be honest, guys, that island looks really, really busy, right? Like just look at it. Like the water there, like there's a lot of people there. So what would that... If I were to guess, I'll probably say that like nobody's gonna be able to get away with much on such a crowded place, right? Just look how many people are here, y'all. Like I don't think that like this is like some secluded island. I was thinking it was gonna be like a secluded island, but it looks like a lot of people are here. So I don't know how they would be able to get away with this. And I'm surprised that nobody else knows. But I guess that's what the sheriff has done. The sheriff probably has talked to all of all these people here, I would hope. Or at least a lot of them. And I'm sure that we'll be hearing more. as more news comes out. But anyways, guys, this has been your live stream. Unfortunately, no matter how much investigation is done, Nolan is not going to be able to come back, right? Which is probably what his parents would be dreaming for. And so my hand goes out to the family and the loved ones. I'll be following this story closely. So, yo, be sure to stay tuned on Le Vibes. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Until next time, peace.